Well, so today I'm gonna give a talk about building bridges, and I've never really I've done a lot of tech talks, so this is like a non-tech talk, and I don't know if I'm good at these yet, so we're gonna give it a go. So what do you guys think about this graphic though? To start, kind of cool, right? Jordan, can you raise your hand? Jordan, are you here? Jordan. So Jordan built this and sent it to us for just to say thanks, or because you're awesome. Yeah. Thanks, man. Appreciate it, bro. Yeah, I love the Angular community is awesome. So that's really what we're going to talk about right now. Is how awesome the Angular community is. So thanks, Jordan. So I'm going to start by talking a little about me. I sweat a lot. So has anyone here ever given a presentation without sweating the whole time? I've never done that, like in my whole life. So we'll see how this one goes. I started in QA. That's actually how I got into development. Did any other QA people here? Like roots in QA? Couple? Okay, cool. That's how I got in, and I'm a dad. I have 4 kids, which is crazy. Don't do it. Been married for 11 years. Dog. Do I keep cutting out? Why do I keep cutting out? It's been like that the last few days, huh? I'm going to take the handheld until we get this figured out. Okay. I'm going to just take this mic off. All right. Is that better? Is that too loud? All right. I'll figure it out. Just give us a second. I have a dog. He's as big as any one of you. It's crazy. Don't have a dog. Who has a dog? If you don't have one, don't get one. Ever. I work at a company called Dahl. It's awesome. They treat me way better than I deserve to be treated, and it's a fun company to work at. We do business intelligence stuff, and I'm on the front-end team where we have like legacy backbone. We do a ton of Angular. We use Lodash. We do D3. We have like a huge OOCSS stuff. It's a gigantic single-page app with too many lines of code, more than you should ever have in one project. And if anyone's interested, we always look for the best. So let us know. I'm an organizer of a big conference called NGConf. Any NGConf attendees? Okay, we got a couple. Cool. Lucas, did you go? Okay. I'm also on a couple podcasts. Any podcast listeners? JavaScript Jabber, Adventures in Angular. Okay, so if you're not into those, check those out. They're really cool podcasts. So that's a little bit who I am. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to start by talking about how big JavaScript is. And it's in the browsers, and it's been there for a really long time, and it's gotten better. It's native. You can do Firefox OS. You can do Chrome apps, PhoneGap. We have our server and our build tools, all written in Node and I/O. In our databases, we can talk JavaScript with Postgres. You can do like JS, JavaScript, stored procs and stuff. And then there's a company called Tessel that actually lets you run JavaScript like native on hardware. So it's kind of everywhere, and it's just really kind of exploded. And it's cool to be a part of it at this stage where it just keeps getting bigger. And every time you think it's like done, it just, it's something like Tessel comes up where you're like, I can write native code like that runs on hardware in JavaScript, which is crazy. Has anyone seen this graphic before? So RedMonk, they do this comparison where they're like, hey, we're going to put on this x-axis, you've got the popularity, language popularity on GitHub by ranking. And then on the y-axis, you have Stack Overflow questions by language, okay? And so when you look at this graphic, I'm going to zoom in on that top corner. JavaScript's like the tip top. JavaScript's got, the most popularity on GitHub, crossed with the most popularity on Stack Overflow. And that's like what we do. This is where we work. It's like the biggest language around. At least according to this graphic, right? I'm sure there's other graphics that will show different languages, but it's huge, and it's fun to be a part of. And when you kind of look at the history of it, who here's been in JavaScript for at least 1 year? Raise your hand. Okay, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 10 years. We lost a lot. 15 years. Okay, we lost even more. So we still have a few hands that are like 15 years or more. Like that's the beginning. Like you're back to the start, right? Which is, we have a handful of people that were there in the beginning. And they'll remember better than the rest of us what it was like when you couldn't write JavaScript. You had to write 3 versions of it because every browser was insane. Do you guys remember that, who had your hands up for 15 years? Even people with 6 or 7 years are going to remember that a little bit better. So I think of it kind of like this orbital clearing pattern, and I'm going to explain orbital clearing real quick. So when a solar system exists, at the beginning of it, there's this hot thing in the center, and there's a ton of other things surrounding the hot thing. And it's pretty dirty, and those things that are around the star in the middle, they're constantly in chaos, like constantly colliding, no real hope to ever evolve, and like immediately evolve anyway. And so they just kind of like collide for a really long time. And eventually they start like gathering up and forming big masses of things that stop colliding with each other as often. And then they start like spinning around and like cleaning out other things. And after a really long time, you have like this pattern where, and this isn't a perfect representation of our galaxy, but you kind of have these patterns where there's large sections of it that are kind of cleaned out, and these big masses, planets, have kind of like collided with everything in their path, and they've kind of like gathered them up into their masses, and they've kind of got smooth sailing, and they can begin to, form atmospheres and maybe support life. And I look at like the JavaScript industry that we're in, and we're kind of like in this cleaner phase, where the people who had their hands raised up that were back in the 1990s, they remember like the orbital clearing phase where they had to go through and like figure out all the things we didn't want anymore and like kind of smooth it all for us. So we're all part of like this orbital clearing where things get better. And like there's this huge line of people that went before us and did that. And each problem that's solved is like another like collision object like taken out of the path. And every rough edge that gets smoothed, that's just another like clearing out the orbit and kind of ensuring the existence of what's going on in the community. Every upgrade makes the path cleaner, and as time passes, you just get stronger, and JavaScript, kind of metaphorically, starts to really sustain life very well. And as time passes, as JS community members, we're the ones, as we start getting up to speed, to start clearing the path for the next round of developers coming after us. So we're still part of this clearing process and making sure that JavaScript is good for the next person. A different analogy on that same idea, which is what we're going to talk about today, is building bridges. So we talked about orbital clearing and kind of how JavaScript's done that. I want to take it to something that's more applicable to each of us today. And I'm going to start by reading a poem by Will Allen Dromgoole called The Bridge Builder. It starts out like this. An old man going a lone highway came at an evening cold and gray to a chasm vast and deep and wide through which was flowing a sullen tide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The sullen stream had no fear for him. But he turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, said a fellow pilgrim near, you're wasting your strength with building here. Your journey will end with the ending day. You'll never again pass this way. You've crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build this bridge at eventide? The builder lifted his old gray head. Good friend, in the path I've come, he said. There followed after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This chasm that has been not to me, to that fair-haired youth may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I'm building this bridge for him. So I wanted to talk about that and how we're bridge builders. I want to talk about this poem a little bit first. So let's think about what happened. So we have our protagonist. We have an old man traveling, right? He crosses a river of sorts, right? He crosses it. It's easy, and then he stops doing what he was doing. He stops his journey to build a bridge for this less experienced youth. Okay, and this is a bridge builder. I want you to think about who were the old men that built the bridges that we crossed. And it's kind of funny. Mishko had a birthday yesterday, right? So yeah, he's a little bit older. But he's kind of all of our own men. He's kind of the one that brought us together, the Angular. He was the guy who went home and on his own time came up with this idea and built this project. People like Yehuda Katz, though, he built Ember and, 1,000 other things. He's done a lot of stuff. These guys are bridge builders. Ryan Dahl built Node, which, almost everyone uses. Brendan Ike created JavaScript. He sits on the board at the TC39, and he's still, ensuring that it will succeed as it goes forward, building that bridge. People like Jake Archibald with service workers and all the other things that they work on to help get the TC39 up to speed. And there's so many more people. Like we heard from Jafar yesterday, who's working on the observable spec and all the things that they've done to really improve our lives and make JavaScript just a better community to be in. So how about the people who cross the bridge or cross the chasm and they don't stop to build the bridge? Think about them for a second. Do you guys know any? Do you remember any? I don't think we really do. There's not a lot of them that we look at and go, hey, that guy crossed and then never looked back to help anyone. That's not really a thing that, as a community member, we seem to embrace. We seem to embrace and look to leadership from those who do stop. And they make it important to help the next person. And that's what bridge building is about. And that's who's remembered are the ones who do stop and make it easier for the next person. And they build bridges for younger developers. I put that in quotes because, like we saw yesterday, Ben Drucker, he's wicked young, and he's clearly a bridge builder. So I'm saying younger, and by younger I mean maybe less experienced, and they just have less understanding. Who here could have built Angular besides Taro? Right? Taro, could you have built Angular? No? Yeah, it's tough. Jeff Cross, don't raise your hand. Matthias, don't say anything. By the way, Matthias is here, everybody. He's on the core team. Welcome in. I couldn't have. I know that. I don't know if you guys could have. I couldn't have built Angular. That was a bridge that I definitely needed built for me. And I think it's, unquestionable. We all unequivocally need a bridge builder and need people around us. So, it's kind of interesting when you reflect and you sit back and you think, hey, who were my bridge builders? What were the bridges I crossed? Because they were all different. We all took different paths, right? And I think about the builders that were in my life, and they just came from random spots. But were they teachers? Were they did you have some class? Or was it a coworker? You were just at work? I had bridge builders that were coworkers. Were they your parents? Was that who built your bridge for you? A community member, someone from a local user group or something? Was it a complete stranger, like Mishko, or the next person, right? Who were the ones who built the bridges for you? I'm going to talk about the bridges I crossed, just to kind of get the juices flowing on thinking about bridges being built. So I started at a community college, and any dropouts? Any other dropouts? Am I alone? We got some good dropouts. Okay, good. So I'm in good crowd. So I dropped out. I learned Java when I was in college, though, and I met people that influenced me. The co-students, the people who were in my classes, still to this day influenced me, and they helped me a lot when I was in college. And then when I was in QA, I had some team members who were nice enough to teach me C# and help me step up my gaming skills, my coding skills. Sorry, not my gaming skills. Any gamers? That's good. I suck, so That's awesome. Any dads that are gamers? Oh, good. That's awesome. That's when I lost it, was when I got my kids. I kind of traded it over for kids. Kind of a raw deal, right? No, I'm just kidding. I love them. Are they here? Okay. I started getting into browser extension competitions because they seemed like smaller competitions for coding, and I felt like I could maybe have some fun and maybe even compete. And like incidentally, they're like, dude, you have to learn this thing. It's called jQuery. It's kind of new. And I'm like, what the fuck? I don't want to learn a thing. And they're like, we'll help you. It's easy. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like way easy compared to the other thing you told me to do, which sucked. And I was like, man, this instantly fit into my head. And I was like, wow, maybe I should learn JavaScript because it seems so much easier. Why did they teach me Java first instead of this? It seems so much easier. And it just felt like easier to go. All I needed was a browser. It was a console, and I could take off and really start making a dent. And then I started going to user groups. So at this point, I've met some friends at the user groups, the Utah JavaScript user group, and some of them have dramatically changed my life. One of my friends, Merrick, is here. Merrick, are you here? Merrick, back in the back. He's going to talk to us later today. Changed my life. And the user group was like a huge thing for me. Anyone else have like crazy benefits coming from their user groups? Like, because my life totally changed based off my user groups that I went to. And there's hundreds of these around the globe. I started getting involved with the Google Developer Group of Utah. And of the Google Developer Groups, there's 645 of these in 110 countries around the globe right now, which is kind of crazy that there's like this kind of a global ecosystem for developers to just go and learn for free and kind of get these bridges built for them. So by this point, I've got my learning during the daytime hours down. I'm like, I can ask a friend, I can do a user group, and I can kind of like answer my own questions during the day, but I'm still screwed during the nighttime, which is most of us code at night, right? Like we all code in the middle of the night, and I was like, how do I get an answer? And someone's like, Stack Overflow. You just ask a question and someone answers. And I was like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, what are you talking about? That's not a site. Who would do that? Are they insane? How much do they get paid? How much do they get paid? Nothing? Then that's not true. That no one would give you an answer for free. And I was like, and I went and I'm like, question, and like 5 minutes later, I'm like, answer. I was like, holy crap, I can get answers all day long. Like there's bridge builders 24 hours a day now. This is crazy. And that was really when I started getting really excited because I could program and I could have endless answers and make progress the whole day. And it still, to me, sounded crazy that you can get people like you to teach people like me how to write JavaScript even in the middle of the night. Like I was like, this is nuts. And it really opened up to me just how cool the JavaScript community is. And I like the kindness. Everyone's just like really, really nice. You have your occasional trolls, but like generally, I'm generalizing, people are super nice. And I feel like the open source nature that comes with JavaScript just inherently makes people willing to share and to build those bridges. But like at the end of the day, we're all like a bunch of weirdos, right? Like we're all kind of geeks, and I'm going to give you an example. So a programmer's wife tells him to buy a gallon of milk, and if there's eggs, buy a dozen. So when the wife sees what he brought home, she angrily asks, why did you buy 13 gallons of milk? And he replies, because there's eggs. It's tough because that's how we think. Like eventually our code becomes us. And like someone's like, well, you know, all of our users like this. And you're like, all of the users, bro? There's not any edge cases? And like you're like throwing, and then all of a sudden your wife, you drop the word edge cases on your wife one day, or you're like your spouse or whoever, or your friend, and they're like, what is an edge case? Or, you know, like we start dropping our lingo on people. So we are like, eventually the deeper you get, the more weird you become. I promise. Like you're all pretty weird. Like we all are, right? On a certain level, we have weird things about us. Anyway, so bridge building is about community building, okay? And stopping to walk your path, don't do that. To help others, that's about community building. And it's about fellowshipping. Okay, and making others around you feel comfortable. And the Angular team has been a great example for me. As I watch how they guide this community, it's pretty amazing. And some of the philosophies they have as they kind of take us forward. And Brad and Igor specifically are like really, really good at it and really talented at guiding a community. We have a couple GDEs here, right? Raise your hand. Stefan, he's still asleep. Captain Morgan, Stefan's there. Okay. Steven, dang, I keep calling you Stefan. Okay, Steven. So Steven and I, GDEs. Matthias used to be GDE. Lucas is GDE. So they had this Google Developer Expert Summit, and it was all the Google Developer Experts for all the technologies that Google has. And it was in November, and like we talked about Android and Glass and new things with Glass, and we talked about Dart and Polymer and all the different Google technologies. But the Angular team, just of all the teams, the Angular team, specifically Brad and, well, Igor, they were there the whole entire summit, like with us, talking to us, eating with us, chatting with us, making sure that everything was cool. They were so, like, they were like above and beyond the best of all the community organizers. They were like exemplary of how you organize a community and how you interact with your GDs. And it really blew me away and like confirmed that they are really great at what they do. And since we're all in Angularville, they have this document that kind of guides them as they interact with the community. Like they have some guiding principles when they talk to people. If anyone wants to pull up this link, they've shared it publicly. And it's just kind of a set of instructions for, as an Angular team member or as an Angular GDE, when you engage the community, these are the things you'll do. These are the things, this is how we do it here. And they're very powerful. They say things like, your words have great effect, plan for what you want the effect to be. Like, when you say something, don't say something on where you're starting. Like, think about the end first, where you want to end up. They talk about being helpful and useful, personal and responsive, positive or constructive. So they're fine with being constructive as long as you keep it positive. Open, honest, humble, no fakes, no rumors, inclusive and empathetic. It's really a good talk. If you guys want to understand how they engage with like React team or Ember team or any other team, like this is a good doc to go read if you want to understand how they do that more. And Igor, his dedication to the community is unwavering. And when you see how much he puts into NGConf, it's like over the top to make it an awesome event. He really cares about the community. He makes sure that when an event like this happens, that we get awesome people like Jeff and Matthias to come and be a part of it. And it's really, and David East, he helped make sure we got them. They've really, he goes above and beyond to help make sure that we're taken care of. So I want to ask a question. Are we a bridge builder? And it's okay if you're not, because some of us, we're the youth that needs to be crossing a bridge, and it's okay. But are we bridge builders? Like, is that where we're at? And how big are the bridges that we build? Think about the bridges that you're involved with building, and the community efforts you're involved with helping on. Are your bridges Stack Overflow answers? Are they blog posts? Are they conference presentations? Do you guys update the documentation? Jared Williams is a GDE for Chrome, and his job is to update the documentation for Chrome. And he's so good at it, they're like, you're a GDE. Like, you're an expert because of how well you do documentation. Is that what you're doing? Like, is that your contribution? Because that's a major contribution. You organize conferences. Do you have an open source project? I know a lot of you, we've covered probably everyone in the room. How do we leave our mark for the next person? What's our role in orbital clearing or bridge building for the next round of people to come after us? Are we the youth that cross the bridge? Because that's also another part of the community. I'm not here just to talk about bridge builders. I'm here to talk about bridge crossers too, because we're all bridge crossers. We've all crossed bridges to get here. And I want to ask, are we thankful? Is that a thing that we really are thankful? What about on projects we don't use, like Ember? Like, I'm kind of happy that those guys are around because they really push the limits on what we're trying to do. React team, they're pushing the limits on what Angular 2 is going to look like. So it's really kind of exciting. I'm thankful they're there. Do we complain or do we help? Does anyone remember a few months ago? It's probably been like half a year now. Does anyone remember we woke up one day and Batarang was broken? A lot of us probably remember that. You just showed up to work and you thought your app was screwed, but it was really Batarang. Remember that? I was super disappointed in some of our community members that day. Because rather than like get in and help, or get in and give a suggestion, or do a pull request and figure out what went wrong, or revert the commit that broke it, they just flamed. And they really kind of put Brian through the ringer. And Brian puts in like his blood, sweat, and tears into Batarang. Like it's kind of a big deal that he does that for us. And we all benefit from it. And I was super disappointed to see people like yell at him. Like at my work, everyone broke. So I went and found the old version that did work and emailed it to everyone and said, hey, uninstall the one, put this one in, gave him instructions on how to unzip it and install it. And then we were up to speed again. And I tried. Batarang's like over my head. I don't get it. It's way too smart for me. So I tried to get in and help, but it wasn't a thing I could do. But think about that. What kind of bridge crosser are you? Are you the kind that complains, or are you the kind that puts in a pull request and tries to help out? Tries to help others get around the solution with a workaround even. So each of us needs to know our role as a bridge builder, as a bridge crosser, and we need to feel it. Bridge builders build. Bridge crossers, be grateful and learn. The only thing you can't do is to don't be the bridge troll, okay? Do your part. The person who's the bridge troll is the one who's not doing their part. So if you're a builder, build. If you're a crosser, cross and be thankful and learn. Figure out how to be a builder. Don't be the bridge troll. I want to talk about a huge bridge builder, like a guy who's like my hero. And I'm going to start by telling a story about his copyright infringement that he did. So does anyone know who these people are? Raise your hands. A couple of us know. Who is it? Yeah, so it's John Carmack and John Romero. So these guys are known as the two Johns. And they're famous for some of the games they built. A few years ago, someone wrote a book about their story called The Masters of Doom. These guys wrote Doom and Quake and Wolfenstein 3D. And their story is super inspiring, and specifically for me, John Carmack was inspirational. These two guys, they're young, they escaped kind of broken houses. They started playing video games and like found some solace in there, and they eventually met up in Louisiana at a company called Softdisk, and they started working together. And they realized really quick that they complemented each other's skill sets. And they went on to build some major games that if you enjoyed one of these games, raise your hand. Like a lot of people really enjoy these games. And they are games that we grew up with and really like still. And some of their skills, like their engines, their game engines that they would build, would go on to power even more games that we all love, even though they weren't the ones building the games. They built the engines underneath them. Yeah, they were such a big deal that literally Congress built laws because of these guys, like around violence in video games. I'm not saying they're awesome because they added violence, but I mean, I'm just trying to point out that they were big deals. For me, John Carmack was like super inspirational, and he was their game engine builder. So when they would come out with a new game, it needed to be better than the last one. So he would go through and rebuild this engine, this graphics engine that would be like the next thing in gaming. And then the other guys would kind of build a game on top of his engine. So he was really kind of the kid who, if he wanted to take his ball and go home, it was kind of all over at that point. So he was kind of like the center of it. And he had some really interesting point of views. He added new things to gaming and graphics that had never been done. One of them they even still to this day call after his name, Carmack's Reverse. And Megatexture, which is still used. But they sat down one night, and it was kind of his first night. He was like, the PC's inferior to what the Nintendo can do. Like, we can't do graphics like the Nintendo. And until we can, the Nintendo's going to own games. And I want the PC to own games. So he sat down one night, and he had this idea called ray casting. He's like, I read about this. I think I could like cache things and just only paint certain sections of the screen rather than the whole screen. And I bet I could do a sideways scrolling game just like the Nintendo on a PC, which some of us are like, who cares? That's probably pretty easy. But back then it was a big deal. He didn't have like extra clock cycles like we do today. And so he sat down in one night and he built this engine, and they dropped in their Dangerous Dave character from all their Dangerous Dave series. Did anyone play Dangerous Dave? Like some of us? Okay. And they dropped him into their Mario knockoff. Where's my volume? Anyway, yeah, so here's what they built one night. And they built it in the middle of the night, and they're like, okay, John Carmack's a genius. And then John Carmack went home, and they left a note for Romero and said, hey, play this when you get in. And he put it in and he played it. He played it for like 30 seconds, and he was like, okay, we're all quitting our job today, and we're starting a new company called id Software, which was the company that they all started. So John was kind of this guy who changed the way games happened. He changed the way that games would happen for all of us, which is awesome. Don't do that anymore. Okay. And he had this one thing that really impressed me. He was super worried because as they got bought, the company was like, too cool. We're going to patent everything you do. He was like, we will not patent anything. I will not patent an idea. And he had this thing he'd say, the idea that I can be presented with a problem, set out to logically solve it with the tools at hand, and wind up with a program that can't be legally used because someone else followed the same logical steps some years ago and filed a patent for it is horrifying. So he built these engines and he innovated like crazy, and then he was like, but I will not patent any of that. I will explain how I did it, and other people can do the exact same thing, and I don't care. Like, we're not going to make money off it. We're not going to restrict people's ability to follow the same path in the future. So by saying, I will not patent, others can follow the same path, and it's okay, for me, he turns into this epic bridge builder, because so many people followed his path. And even when he built like a killer engine, he was like, hey, let's license this engine so other people can build games with it, so that they don't have to go and try and find a John Carmack of their own. They can build killer games on top of this engine. For me, John Carmack has been inspirational. So before I end, I want to add a couple last stories as that are like precursor challenges for each of us. At NGConf this year, we went out to grab dinner one night, and there was a lady in the lobby named Bonnie. And she says to me, we're out at dinner, and she explains to me her story. Her story is simply, she's in Houston. There's no Angular developers in Houston, so she has to learn Angular on her own. And in my mind, I'm like, there's no way that there's not Angular developers in Houston. Like, there's got to be a ton of them. So I was like, hey, if you don't have one, you need to start one. Like, you need to start an AngularJS user group. And I think you'll be surprised at what happens. So she did, and within like a few weeks, she ends up with 117 like members in her meetup. And they've had a couple events now, and she was like, wow, you're right. Like, and so now she's part of this community down there, and she's building this community, helping it grow down in Houston, which I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. Another friend of mine, his name's Josue. Oh man, I screwed up on these slides, I'm sorry. Josue Gutierrez, he lives in Mexico City. He saw our NGConf website. This is going to be painful. He saw our NGConf website and was like he says, a light turned on in my head that I needed to do that. So he now runs AngularJS Mexico City. And it's like a huge meetup. Like, it's a big deal. And he like guides it, and he gets speakers from other countries. Like, he's a phenomenal group organizer. And he's building these bridges. I went down there, I spoke one time, and I was blown away at like the talent they got. They got all age groups represented, and I was able to chat with different people, and like super talented group of people, all because of Josue's like, hey, I'm just going to build a group now, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a community organizer. So my closing challenge to everybody, to myself included, is don't be passive. I want everyone to explicitly affect change. Find what needs to be changed and go change it. I want you to stop watching, get involved, leave your mark, and remember that the thing about Angular, as cool as it is, that makes it special is it's the community. Like, it's not like the team that makes it like amazing. It honestly is the community that makes it, it's made it explode, that's made it fun to be a part of. So don't forget that when you're out there. Get out there, leave your mark, and have fun when you do it. So go build some bridges, everybody. Thank you.